To the Black girl who is struggling with gratitude this season, I see you. Hey, it's Kaylin, a licensed clinical social worker and therapist in Atlanta, Georgia, and this is the Black Girl Scene podcast. Welcome back to the next episode of the Black Girl Scene podcast. I'm so happy you're here. If you're listening at or around the time that this episode drops, it's Thanksgiving week, and the holidays bring up a lot of emotions, not just about family and gatherings, but also just the reasons of the world, the history of the holiday, and it's also loaded with this concept of gratitude. Now, don't get me wrong, I love gratitude. There's nothing really wrong with it. She gets a huge parade. There are a lot of studies that tote gratitude as this huge moderator for our mental well-being, and I agree, but I think we forget that there can be too much of a good thing. I do think sometimes we can perform something called toxic gratitude, the same way we can perform toxic positivity. So this week, I want to do a quick episode to go along with the Unhappy Holidays series, where we're getting honest and real about how we feel this holiday season and in any season, even if that means naming that we don't feel grateful right now. So let's dive in. What is toxic gratitude? Not to create another term for pop culture, but I use it to describe the point at which we are using gratitude as a cover or a way to suppress, ignore, or invalidate our emotions. It can be a form of masking and hiding. Now, it's not bad or wrong to look for reasons to be grateful while we don't feel good or while we're down. It's not that we're only ever allowed to feel one way. But it can be problematic when we use it to dismiss our other emotions. It's like a form of emotional bypassing. I think it's also a form of spiritual bypassing, right? Some ways that this could look, which I think we're all guilty of at some point, is constantly saying, it's not that bad. It could be worse when we're thinking or recalling a painful or challenging life circumstance. Maybe we're often comparing ourselves to how much we have it better than others, as if our pain is only relative, right? Like, pain is pain. If it hurts, it hurts. Your pain does not increase the pain of others just because you're feeling it. But somehow we feel like we need to keep our pain tucked in a corner just because other people are hurting. And that comes from somewhere. That's a relational wound, which we'll get to. We might feel guilty for feeling bad at all and have a general resistance to allowing uncomfortable emotions. So I know I throw around words like good, bad, positive, negative sometimes in the podcast, but those words aren't really helpful. They're very absolute, and they bring a lot of judgment to how we feel. It's usually just the spectrum of comfortable to uncomfortable. So we probably have a lot more openness to some of the more comfortable emotions, but we really, really fight the uncomfortable ones. And that comes from somewhere too. We also might use gratitude to protect ourselves from resentment or feeling upset with others out of fear of loss, rejection, or abandonment. And I think that is a huge sign of where toxic gratitude might come from and why we struggle with it, especially in this culture. It can come from our trauma, surprise, surprise, where we're made to feel shame for having anything when you didn't have enough, right? So, and again, this is just real, y'all. If your family grew up with not having enough to eat, and then you do have a preference, right, for a certain meal, and that's not the meal of the day, and a caregiver might really become frustrated with that because food is food in that moment, right, in that survival moment. And that can turn around and kind of become blown out of proportion when we then feel like we always have to be okay with everything because we have anything. And that's not the case, right? There's a lot of overcorrection here. That's kind of what I'm speaking to. Some other ways we may source or lean into toxic gratitude is some caregivers maybe weaponize gratitude to protect us from having to deal with the harm, or rather protect them from dealing with the harm that they may have created against you, intentional or otherwise. So that might look like, be grateful for what you have in me. You know, you better be happy that I've done XYZ for you. So a lot of downplaying of the harm that's being created by kind of scapegoating like the things that you do have, which that's what we end up doing to ourselves, right? We might be made to feel guilty for having uncomfortable emotions. And I think a lot of people can relate to this, trauma or not, healthy home or not, if you will. because so many of us just don't have the capacity to sit with uncomfortable emotions. I also think it's ultimately this big rescue behavior, right? I think it's designed to make you feel better quickly. And to go along with that last example, a lot of caregivers and people who don't have the capacity to hold uncomfortable emotions, ultimately they're thinking, if I can help you feel better quickly, then I don't have to feel bad with you. That's where I think so much of this can come from. And I don't always think this is conscious, yet it happens to us anyway. And so this all boils down to the fact that we do live in a world where we have a lot of low capacities and high stigma for uncomfortable emotions, right? I think even if we just struggle with our capacity for them, but we respected them, we honored them, we could work through that. But we both stigmatize it and lack the capacity to hold it. So we're taught that we always have to be okay. And maybe we could be a little angry sometimes, but for the most part, if it's not roses, flowers, or neutral, it's bad. And it needs to be fixed and gotten rid of. And that's not fair to us. That's not how this works. That's a lot of what keeps us stuck when we just don't feel our feelings. We think that if we just ignore them, they'll go away. And we don't even realize that when we numb our abilities to feel like the uncomfortable emotions, then we're doing the same with the comfortable one. We feel them all the same way. So this is ultimately suppressing our comfortable emotions too. I'm going to do a whole episode on feeling your feelings, but until then, if there's anything I can say to help invite us into this practice of becoming safe with our own feelings, actually honoring them and realizing how important they are and not rushing to get rid of them, really opening up to doing the thing that a lot of us have avoided anyway, I want you to think about how emotionally healthy people would be, especially the people who harmed us or even the people that you deal with day in and day out who you are always thinking, oh, she needs to go sit on that lady couch, right? If they felt their feelings and you think that's going to help them, think about how much it'll help you, right? What happens when we all do our emotional work, when we all sit with our pain? That's how we get better. It just is what it is. So if we can take that at face value for now, I want to hold space for the Black girls who just don't feel good this holiday season. And I hope that you can receive that and hold space for yourself as well. If you're one of the hundreds of thousands of Black women who lost your job recently and you are struggling, which we all know that is a gross injustice against so many people, I see you. And you don't have to fake the funk. You don't have to host Thanksgiving just because you always have. You don't even have to contribute to the dinner in the ways that you typically do. Give yourself permission to take a break. If you are feeling lonely in this season, or you're feeling down, you're trying to find your way back to feeling hopeful, I see you. And it's okay to not be okay. We can hold gratitude that we still have some things while making room for the grief of the things we don't have and the losses that we're enduring. It's that simple. Gratitude works when you allow yourself to cry in the arms of your best friend and you lament about how terrible everything is. And somehow you end up belly laughing and feeling better. And then you feel grateful that if you have to go through this storm, you're doing it with her, right? Gratitude works when you acknowledge that there are inequities in the world that have broken your heart. You don't try to mask it up, right? You acknowledge the pain and frustration of injustice. And you sit with the fact that the only way we ever found our way forward as a people is through the anger of an ethical action, right? So you go to that food bank with your anger and you find gratitude that you can be present and help others. We make room for all of it. That is when any of it really counts. Grief without gratitude, gratitude without grief, they don't really serve us in the same ways. We need both. We need all of those feelings. They are all welcome. So I want to invite you to reflect about your feelings this holiday season, honestly. So yeah, ask yourself, what are you grateful for this year? What are you feeling grateful for in this moment? But also ask yourself, what are you grieving this year? Make room for your grief. Find gratitude in your grief. Don't block that for yourself, especially as you work on being seen. I really want to invite you to make room to allow yourself to be seen in this way in this season. I hope you appreciated this small episode, and I hope you make time this week to maybe go back and listen to some others, but also spend time celebrating these moments as you need. If you enjoyed it, please be sure to like, subscribe, and share not only the podcast on all these platforms, but also the Scene Sunday newsletter so that you won't miss a future episode. And with that, to the Black girl who is making room for both grief and gratitude, I see you. Take care. Thanks for tuning in to the Black Girl Scene podcast. This podcast is meant for information purposes only and is not meant to substitute for medical advice. Although I'm a licensed therapist, this podcast does not establish a clinical relationship with you, the listener, nor does it replace a relationship with a licensed mental health professional. For more information and resources on finding a therapist or support, please visit www.blackgirlscene.com/support.